Emma Webber, the mother of Barnaby, of course, who was killed in the Nottingham attack last year, has published a letter in this morning's Times, which many of you have now read, asking police officers to show the respect that was not given to her son.
This officer exchanged a message about the attack, which also killed Barnaby's friend Grace omalley-Kumar and, of course, Ian Coates as well. The message was shared on WhatsApp, a group between officers. There is distressing language used. One of the messages read, "Two students have been proper butchered." Other messages on the group chat also contain graphic references, which we can't even report on the programme this morning. But Emma has read the transcripts and, as a result, wrote a letter to the police officers involved and felt she had to go public with it because the Chief Constable would not give that letter to the police officers. Here is Emma reading her letter, and we'll speak to her in just a moment.
As Barney's mum, it's so important that you hear my voice about the nature of how some of you within your group chose to address the brutal murder of my son. When you say a couple of students have been properly butchered, did you stop to think about the absolute terror that they felt in the moment when they were ambushed and repeatedly stabbed? My aim is not to cause undue shame or to have anyone publicly vilified. There's no need to add yet more pain. Emma Webber, proud mum of Barnaby Philip John Webber.
And that's not even the full letter, Emma. Your letter describes what Barnaby was wearing that night. A T-shirt that he had, in fact, given as a gift to his own brother, but loved it so much. He'd borrowed it. Trousers that you'd given him for his birthday. Yeah. You talk about walking past his bedroom, still seeing all of his things. You talk about the calendar on his wall, which is always going to be stuck on June 2023. Yeah. And the purpose of writing this letter was to say to the police officers, well, you tell us.
I think when we found out about it, it was very late. It was not until towards the end of February, when I read the language that was used to describe my child and my son, a human being. It horrified me, and the trauma that it's caused the families is untold. The more I thought about it, the more that this keeps happening. It's not exclusively happened just to us. It's happened to lots of families. It's where's the humanity? Where's the decency? And I think it has to be addressed. And so initially I asked the Chief Constable if I could address the officers. I didn't want to see them. I didn't want to meet them. I didn't need their names, but I just wanted them to understand. And the reason I talk about Barney's, what he's wearing and his age and the fact he'd nicked his brother's T-shirt he'd given him is that, you know, Barney's a human being. He was a person with hopes and dreams that were taken away from him, and to respond and to use that type of language dehumanises him, but I also think it dehumanises the officers involved.
So this was, in your mind, this was very much to be a private conversation, as it were, at arm's length with these officers. You didn't want to go public with it. You didn't you didn't want to publish what they'd actually said, which people can now read because you've written it.
It's awful.
So what did you hope, if they had actually seen those letters, what did you hope would then happen? What did you hope you'd get out of it?
From my perspective, it's something I couldn't let lie. I had to address it. And I wanted the officers concerned to take a moment, as I've put in the letter, to pause and think. And I hope it might educate them in the future. And I wasn't asking for any further misconduct or disciplinary against them. That's been denied, the opportunity to do it privately. However, I do think that perhaps it's strange how things turn out, because publicly it's a wider story now, and it's at risk of being endemic in this country. That particularly the police, but you know, some of our emergency service responders, it's not gallows humour. They are desensitised and disrespectful.
It's a very important point. This isn't black humour, as you say.
No,
these aren't dark jokes. It's just extremely explicit. And very unsavoury use of language. Look, you've had a huge number of supportive calls from people, and particularly those who've actually read the letter in the Times today, which we're going to print off for you and give to you before you go.
That would be lovely.
Amongst them, there are people who are posing this question. I'd like to read one of these to you, because I'd love to know what your response to this is. Okay. This reflects a body of opinion out there this morning, which is very sympathetic to you, but nevertheless, this is Karen on what used to be Twitter, X, and she says, I can so see why she's so hurt. But at the same time, it must be traumatic for the officers involved, and they should be able to talk freely to their colleagues as they deal with their trauma. If this was a closed, private WhatsApp group, it wasn't intended, clearly, to be read by others. Now, I'm only reading that to you because it is reflective of a number of people who've come in and said that. What would you say to those people?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we have actually got in writing from the Chief Constable that it's not permissible for officers to form and use a WhatsApp group for professional circumstances. Right. They're not allowed to have it on their work phones. We also believe that officers have a duty of conduct if they see anything that's beyond the boundaries of their code of conduct or legality, to report them, and we've not been told if anyone was reported. I do understand, of course, they're traumatised, but note that the person that's written this message has only had a management intervention. Yeah. The person that shared the message is the only person that's been publicly named and shamed. Yeah. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't need to. I'm sure he's been through enough, and you know, mistakes can be made. But you can have a traumatic experience, but why would you use words like butchered? And why would it, you know, be used in that context?
It's the curse of inappropriate. It's the curse of social media, partly, isn't it? I mean, we know that emergency service workers, whatever profession they're in, do speak in terms because, to some extent, they have to express their feelings to each other in private. But now they put it down in writing and they share it, and it becomes available. That's part of the root of the problem, isn't it?
It really is, and I think it's obviously how do we provide a solution? I don't know, and we've got so much
code of conduct, don't you?
I think there is a code of conduct, and I think it starts at the top, and it has to come from the leadership. But it's, you know, WhatsApp's a conversation. WhatsApp's not an email or a statement that can be misconstrued. The Nottinghamshire Police Force, we've also had somebody sacked for viewing in August the body cam footage of Barney.
Yes.
I mean, that's grotesque. And they didn't need to view it. They weren't involved in the case. Someone was sacked only
So you mean that's just voyeurism, basically, isn't
it? It's the most grotesque voyeurism. I think we've said that before. And somebody was sacked only last week, again, for accessing information. We know that 3 council workers who support the police also have had management interventions. But all of this has come as drip feed. We were never told about it. And there's a lack of transparency and very poor communication. And, you know, people do make mistakes, and I understand that. But I do think that I would be doing Barney and Grace and Ian, actually, a disservice if we don't address this. Yes. Because the other option is to have just gone quiet and nobody... no one would be spoken to from our perspective.
You read a portion of your letter last night for our cameras, and you woke up this morning and the Times had gone to press.
Yeah.
And it's out there now. How do you feel about it this morning? Do you feel completely satisfied you've done the right thing in publicising this?
It was a really difficult decision to make because the implications aren't just to me or my immediate family. It affects the Kumar family, it affects the Coates family, and our wider circle of family and friends. But having spoken about it with them, we feel that we've got to bring this to the public attention. Yes. Because it just has to be addressed. And if you're put in a situation where when you've been given a voice, as much as we really didn't want to have a voice, then we need to use it, I suppose, to try and evoke some change.
I know you're hoping for change with the sentencing of the person responsible for Barnaby's death and the other deaths and the attempted murder as well of the other victims. At the beginning of next month, Court of Appeal is going to review whether the hospital order was unduly lenient.
Yeah.
What would you say? I mean, what do you hope is the outcome of that? In an ideal world where justice is done for your child, what happens?
That Callaghan receives a penal element. That
goes to prison.
There's recognition that he had intent. He was culpable. He knew he was mentally ill. But I would argue in this country, how could you commit a crime like that and not be mentally ill? It wasn't done in retaliation or an accident or any other situation. He ambushed them, lured them in and ambushed them. He didn't even charge at them. So, yes, we need to have that penal element that's been recognised by the Attorney-General, so that it's unduly lenient.
So at some stage in his hospital treatment, he is well enough, doesn't have diminished responsibility anymore, he's well enough to go and serve his time in prison.
Yeah. He's the one that chose not to take his medication. He's the one that chose to carry a rucksack full of weapons and planned the attack and over days and hours preceding what happened.
Well, good luck.
We'll hopefully talk to you next month.
Yeah, fingers crossed that we'll get some result on that.
I think you're incredibly brave. Thank you so much for coming in and talking so honestly and openly about this. And I'm just basically bearing your feelings to the world.
Thank you, and thank you for supporting us.
Of course we do, always, yes. Well, look, going back to these inappropriate messages, Nottinghamshire Police have contacted us and they said it would be inappropriate to comment further due to the ongoing independent investigation by the Independent Office for Police Conduct and the review by the College of Policing. That's their statement.
So their statement is that they can't make a statement?
Yeah.
They can't comment. If you have been affected by any of the issues that we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines. Thank you, Emma, and lots of love to you and the families of everyone.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Yeah.